Everybody knows space is silent. No air, no sound. That's one of the first things we learn about the universe. And yet NASA released recordings from black holes, the sun, Jupiter, and even deep space itself. Some of these sounds are so strange they don't even seem real. So, what's going on here? Have scientists recorded sound in a place where sound shouldn't exist? Or have we misunderstood one of the most famous facts in astronomy? Because the truth is far stranger than most people realize. To understand why these recordings are so strange, we need to start with a simple fact. Sound isn't actually a thing. At least not in the way most people think. Sound is vibration. When you speak, your vocal cords vibrate. Those vibrations push against the air around you, creating tiny waves that travel to someone else's ears. The same thing happens when a dog barks, a guitar string vibrates, or a thunderstorm rolls across the sky. No vibrations, no sound. But there is one catch. Those vibrations need something to travel through. Air works. Water works. Even solid metal works. That's why placing your ear against a train track can let you hear an approaching train long before you can hear it through the air. But I advise you not to do that. Space, however, has none of those things. Between the planets and stars, there is an almost perfect vacuum. No air, no water, nothing for sound waves to travel through. Which means, according to everything we know about physics, space should be completely silent. And that's exactly why NASA's recordings are so difficult to explain. The first crack in this idea came from a place much closer to home, the Sun. At first glance, the Sun seems like an unlikely suspect, but after all, it's a giant ball of superheated gas, which means sound waves can move through it just like they move through Earth's atmosphere. And astronomers discovered something remarkable. The entire Sun is constantly vibrating. Deep beneath the surface, enormous pressure waves travel through the star, causing it to expand and contract in complex patterns. Some of those vibrations are so large that they can be detected from millions of miles away. In a way, the Sun behaves like a gigantic musical instrument. It generates countless vibrations that ripple through its interior. By studying these vibrations, scientists can even investigate part of the Sun that can never be seen directly, a field known as helioseismology. And here's where the things start getting strange. When NASA converted those vibrations into audio, the result was unexpected. It wasn't because microphones recorded sound in space, but because the Sun really is vibrating. The difference is that those vibrations are happening inside the star itself, not throughout the vacuum surrounding it. At least that's an explanation we can live with. The real mystery begins when scientists start finding similar signals coming from places where that explanation shouldn't work at all. Now, if the story ended with the Sun, there really wouldn't be any mystery. The Sun is made of hot, turbulent gas. Vibrations can travel through it, and scientists can study those vibrations. Strange? Absolutely. Impossible? Not really. But then, scientists turned their attention to the planets. And that's where things became much harder to explain. One of the most famous examples comes from Jupiter. For decades, spacecraft exploring that giant planet detected powerful bursts of radio energy coming from its immense magnetic field. These signals were invisible to the human eye, but instruments detected them with ease. When scientists converted those signals into audio, the results sounded almost eerie. It doesn't sound like a planet. It sounds more like something from a science fiction movie. And Jupiter wasn't alone. Saturn produced its own strange emissions. Then Earth's magnetic field generated haunting sounds above the polar regions. Even auroras, the beautiful lights dancing across the night sky, were found to be associated with powerful electromagnetic activity. The deeper scientists looked, the stranger the universe became. But there was still a problem. None of these recordings were captured by microphones. Nobody was floating through space with a giant recording device. Instead, scientists were detecting signals and translating them into something our ears could understand. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If we're not actually hearing these objects directly, then what exactly are we listening to? And the strangest answer of all came from a place where sound should be more impossible than anywhere else in the universe. Scientists had already found strange signals coming from the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, and even Earth's magnetic field. But none of those discoveries prepared them for what happened next. In 2022, NASA released a recording that immediately spread across the internet. A sound from a black hole. Not a star, not a planet, a black hole. And if there is one object in the universe that shouldn't be making any sound, it's a black hole. After all, black holes don't even emit light. They're famous for being dark, invisible, and silent. So when people heard the recording, many assumed one of two things. Either NASA had somehow achieved the impossible, or the entire thing was fake. Then they listened. It's unsettling and it's almost haunting. The kind of sound you expect to hear in a horror movie, not from a galaxy cluster hundreds of millions of light years away. And that's exactly why it captured so much attention. But hidden beneath the headlines was a detail most people missed. NASA didn't place a microphone next to a black hole. In fact, that would be impossible. The recording came from Perseus Cluster, a gigantic collection of galaxies nearly 250 million light years away from Earth. At the center of that cluster sits a supermassive black hole surrounded by extremely hot gas. As the black hole interacts with the gas, enormous pressure waves ripple through the cluster, creating patterns that scientific instruments can detect. In other words, the black hole wasn't singing into a microphone. Scientists were observing something far more subtle. And once again, they converted those signals into a form our ears could understand. Which means we are left with the same question we started with. If NASA isn't recording sound directly, why do all of these recordings sound so real? And the answer is, NASA isn't really recording any sound, at least not in the way most people imagine. When most of us think of a recording, we picture a microphone capturing vibrations traveling through the air. But space doesn't work that way. Instead, spacecrafts are constantly detecting other kinds of signals. Radio waves, magnetic fields, charged particles. These signals are completely real. Instruments can measure them with incredible precision. The problem is that human senses were never designed to experience them directly. We can't see radio waves, we can't hear magnetic fields, we can't naturally detect plasma rippling through a galaxy cluster. So scientists did something clever. They translated the data into sound. This process is known as sonification. Think of it like translating a book from one language into another. The story remains the same and only the form changes. The eerie sounds from Jupiter, the haunting black hole recordings, even the strange vibrations of the sun. They all began as real measurements collected by scientific instruments. What we are hearing is not fiction, and it's not a special effect. It's data converted into something our brains can understand. And once you realize that, something even more fascinating becomes clear. Because the universe may be filled with signals, vibrations, and activity far beyond the limits of human perception. We are simply translating a tiny fraction of it into forms we can experience. Which raises an interesting question. If we could somehow hear everything happening around us in space, what would the universe actually sound like? The answer is probably nothing like the movies. If you were floating in open space far away from any spacecraft or planet, you wouldn't hear dramatic explosions or roaring engines. In fact, you wouldn't hear much at all. The vacuum between planets would prevent ordinary sound from reaching you. But that doesn't mean the universe around you would be inactive. Quite the opposite. The sun would still be vibrating. Jupiter's magnetic field would still be generating powerful radio emissions. Charged particles would still be racing through space at incredible speeds. And across the cosmos, stars, nebulae, and even black holes would continue producing signals that scientific instruments can detect. The strange thing is that all of this activity is happening right now. The universe isn't waiting for us to discover it. We are simply becoming better at noticing it. For most of human history, these signals were completely invisible to us. Today, instruments can detect them, computers can analyze them, and scientists can even transform them into sounds we can hear. In a way, we are expanding our senses beyond the limits that nature gave us. Not because space has suddenly become noisy, but because we are learning how to listen to parts of the universe that were always there. We started with a simple question. If space is silent, why does NASA keep releasing sounds from black holes, planets, and stars? The answer isn't that the laws of physics are wrong. Space is still a vacuum, and sound still needs a medium to travel through. But the universe is filled with signals, vibrations, and activity that exists far beyond the limits of human hearing. For the first time in history, we are learning how to translate some of those hidden signals into something we can experience ourselves. So, is space silent? Technically, yes, but the universe itself is anything but. Thank you for watching, keep looking up.